Morning, everyone. It's Monday today. Are you managing to keep track of the days, or do you know what day it is? For example, do you know even what time of day it is? I often wake up in the morning wondering what day is it. Mind you, some might have said that previously, that you didn't know what day it was or what time of day it is. Can you notice anything? Look at this. I bought some clippers, and I did half my hair and Mavorian did the other half. What do you think of that? I know you all want me to come round and clip your hair, and I will do. But what a great thing, isn't it, to have your hair cut? Anyway, today I'd planned to talk to you about attraction today. But I was struck by something Tom said in his sermon yesterday about how God speaks to us. And many of us might have experienced that in a variety of ways. And Tom and I went for a walk in Bantock Park this week, just to talk some things over about church and some issues. And one of the things we said was how important it was to hear people's stories, and how we need to find a way of facilitating the telling of those stories with not only the people in St Albans, but hopefully people within the wider community. Everybody's got a story, haven't they? And there's a wealth of wisdom in many people's stories that we need to listen to. It's important to listen to people and to people's stories. So I hope that we can do that at some point. And it was Tom's sermon that prompted me to change my talk today, to tell you about just one incident today, about when God spoke to me in a profound way, profound life-changing way. And I want for you to see and hear these stories as an encouragement to tell your own stories for others to hear, or indeed to use it to reflect on your own life and see where God may have spoken to you in whatever form that has taken. Because sometimes when we reflect on our lives, on things from the past, we find things there that we can make a connection with and see more clearly than we had at the time. Things that we might have previously dismissed, we might find something of a profound nature. So I'd encourage you to tell your stories and to reflect on your life in that way. And the story today relates to a time when I was really ill with clinical depression and anxiety. And I became so ill that a psychiatrist asked Mavorian if she would agree with me being hospitalised. Now, Mavorian knew what my view of this would be, and because she refused, and I was an approved social worker at that time under the Mental Health Act, and had a particular view of the value of hospitalisation, and I still hold that view. And the psychiatrist threatened sectioning if there was no improvement in a week or so. Anyway, I was so ill, I couldn't wash myself, I couldn't even brush my teeth, I had trouble dressing in the morning, and my whole world, everything in it, was filled with fear, a wretched fear. And each morning I would wake up terrified, literally terrified, sweating and shaking and heart pounding, difficulty focusing. And I always had to wake Mavorian up and to be present with me, to be there, because I couldn't face being alone with my fear. And this happened daily for a long time. But one morning I woke up and I was struck dumb. I was literally struck dumb. I couldn't physically speak. And try as I might, my mouth wouldn't open, and I couldn't even fetch a noise from my voice box. And as I lay there, without being able to do anything, I was given a picture that was so vivid, it felt very real, that I was in this picture. And it was of a man, a blacksmith, hammering on an anvil. And on the anvil was a number, and the number was 14, and it was cast in metal. And the hammering was so loud, and the sparks were flying off the number as the blacksmith hammered. You can picture the scene, can't you? The fire of the blacksmith, the huge anvil, the hammer, bang, 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 bang on this number. And then when he'd done with that, he then took a number 20 and did the same. Bang, bang, bang. And the hammering, so loud. And then suddenly the picture changed, and it was a more peaceful, it was like a pastoral scene. And it was a picture of a man climbing up a huge grassy hill. And when he reached the top, and when he was just about to go over into the valley, he whispered the number 53. And that whisper echoed around the valley. Can you imagine a whisper echoing in a valley? And then the picture ended, and suddenly my tongue was loosened, and I could speak. And I woke Maureen up and I said, please, this is what I just said to her. I didn't say anything else. I said, please remember these numbers, 14, 20 and 53. She must have thought I was mad. Well, I suppose I was, really, which was the whole point of it. And later I explained to her what had happened, and that I knew these numbers were important in some way. But I didn't know what they meant. And, you know, for the rest of the day and the next day, we racked our brains. What do these numbers mean? And we both had faith at the time. And we thought, we started to think firstly about, Bible passages. And then we dismissed that, saying, well, where would we start? Because we've only got numbers. We haven't got the books or the verses or whatever. And it came to the point that I thought I'd just give the numbers to my dad to put on the football pools. He'd only ever won 5 shillings, so maybe he'd win his fortune. Anyway, a couple of days later, a dear friend came. She's now an ordained minister, and I used to work with her as a social worker. And we told her about this vision and the numbers. And we said, we'd been racking our brains and we didn't know where to look. We'd dismissed the Bible, if you can dismiss the Bible. We'd dismissed the Bible. And then she said, well, the only thing, if you're looking at the Bible, the only thing it could be was the book of Psalms, which of course are just numbered. Why didn't we think of that? I don't know. It just seems obvious now. It just seems obvious. And so we looked at these Psalms, and we looked at Psalm 14, and it starts off with, fools say in their hearts there is no God. And it goes on to say that God looks down from heaven to humankind to see if anyone is there who is wise to seek after God. And it goes on to talk about God being the refuge of the righteous. And I'm really paraphrasing this and simplifying it. I'm not really doing it justice. But it told me at the time that there was a God, that I didn't have to worry. There was a God. And that he could be a refuge. He was a refuge. And that he will restore. And Psalm 20 says, the Lord will answer you in the day of trouble. The name of the God of Jacob will protect you. And it talks about granting heart's desires and fulfillment of plans, and that God will help his anointed and answer them from heaven. And it was something that I didn't feel right then, but something that I desperately wanted to hear. And Psalm 53, and this is what clinched it for me. Psalm 53 is almost exactly the same psalm as Psalm 14. And this clinched it, that I felt that God was speaking directly to me, because I believe that God gave me this 53 to convince me that it was him, that he was with me in all this. And he was taking into account my natural cynicism, because if I'd have just had 14 and 20, and I might have said, that's just a coincidence, don't. Because I'm very cautious about these things. I won't jump on things straight away. I need to think and look to see if they're real. And this was very real to me. Remember that 53 was said in a whisper as the man was going over the hill. It wasn't hammered on the anvil. And God, it was as if to say, God was saying, I'm just giving you this as a confirmation, because I know how your mind works. And this was the beginning of the start of a healing path, of a healing journey. There was still a long way to go. It took about a year for me to fully rise to health, but this was the start. This was the path opening up before me. And if it hadn't been for God, and if it hadn't been for Maureen and her care for me at that time, I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't be here now. I'd never read those particular psalms, so they weren't in my memory store. It wasn't something that I'd sort of plucked out of my head. It was certainly something that came not from within me, but from without me. And I still revisit those psalms when doubt ensues. And I'm still working through them. I still look at their implications some 38 years later. It's that long. And I still don't think I've uncovered everything in them. And it was a profound experience. And it was the beginning of lots of things. It wasn't just the beginning of a healing from that illness. It was at the beginning of lots of things beyond that. And there's a number of stories, and I will share one more story with you, not today, but on Wednesday. That I feel that God has spoken to me, and I'm nothing special. God speaks to each one of us in different ways. I'm no different to you, any one of you. And I hope these stories might encourage you, as I said, to think about your own lives, to think about your own stories. And it'd be great if you could make a comment on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel, whichever you watch it from, to say that whether this is something you'd like to do, to share a story, and where we might be able to gather stories together to show God speaking, to show God's working in the world, God's working in our everyday life, God's concerned about us, God supporting us, God even chiding us sometimes. And it doesn't matter if your story, if you feel that your story isn't as dramatic or life-changing at that particular point as that story that I've just told. It doesn't matter, because it will still be profound. I'm sure, and I know that God speaks to us, and that he speaks in very different ways according to who we are, according to our circumstances. We just have to keep our spiritual ears and eyes open. Anyway, I'll be with you again on Wednesday, if I can remember what day it is. And take care, and I pray peace for you. God bless. Bye-bye.